We got some big injury news prior to this Week 13 game between Miami and New Orleans. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nick Roloff. Miami obviously sitting at 4-7, looking to get back into the playoff race. Have an opportunity against the Saints out of the bye week to improve to 5-7, and then you go to the Jets the following week to potentially get to 6-7, and you're right there in the hunt with the home stretch of the season approaching in December. But we got some injury news for both sides to discuss in this one. We'll start with Miami, and we'll start with the good news here. Rasul Douglas is expected to be back. Mike McDaniel made that note after missing a pair of games against the Bills and Commanders with a foot injury due to the bye week. Rasul Douglas has been doing the right rehab, doing the right preparation, and it sounds like the Dolphins CB1 will be back. And that is honestly just big-time stuff for the Dolphins. Obviously, Juju Brents got hurt in that game against the Commanders. He is out for the year. He has already been placed on season-ending IR. That was a major bummer because Brents was starting to play really good football, played a really good game against the Buffalo Bills in the absence of Rasul Douglas, but also played really solid against the Commanders prior to that injury. And with him being gone, with Brent's gone, if Douglas did not return, you were going to have to rely on Jason Marshall Jr. being your CB2. And no shade on the Rook, but he just hasn't been good enough to warrant the confidence in me and you guys at home to potentially fill that void opposite of Jack Jones. But Douglas has been a top 20 graded corner throughout the season for Miami, and he has played elite level ball. And I think him and Jack Jones have been a revelation for this Dolphins football team. I mean, who would have thought maybe the strength of this defense would have actually been the secondary this season? Seriously, it legitimately might be a strength this year for the Dolphins defense because the run defense has really struggled throughout the year for the most part, but it has been getting better. Before we continue on here, if you want the Dolphins to beat the Saints on Sunday, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and don't jinx it. I get a list of people who watch the video and don't let your name be on that list. But as we continue to talk about the good news for the Miami Dolphins, we have talked a lot about the players on IR that could potentially return. James Daniels might never return this season. That's an absolute train wreck. But two players that will likely be back, at least one of these two will be, for this game tomorrow against the Saints, is Darren Waller and Austin Jackson. Waller, who was out with a pec injury. This is his first week that he's available to be back in the Dolphins lineup. He had his 21-day practice window opened on Wednesday. He worked with the Dolphins in practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Reporters in the area said he was running and moving very, very well, and he was listed as questionable on the Dolphins' final injury report Friday afternoon. So it makes me think Darren Waller will be back, and I'll be fascinated to see what Miami ultimately does with this tight end usage. Obviously, with Waller out and Julian Hill missing a lot of time as well, they just had two active tight ends every Sunday after they waived Tanner Conner. That would be Hayden Rucci, who they moved from the practice squad to the 53-man, and Greg Dulcich, who they did the same thing for just a couple weeks prior. Dulcich, 8 catches, 89 yards on the year. Rucci really hasn't done much. Julian Hill, not really a threat in the receiving game, more used as a blocker. Darren Waller is that receiving threat. In the 3.5 games he played before getting hurt, well, he had 4 touchdowns, over 100 yards, and was one of Tua's favorite targets, not only in big-time crucial third downs, but in the red zone. So I do believe Waller being back could be big-time stuff for the Miami Dolphins, especially in the passing game, to add another layer for this offense. And we're going to continue the conversation, but quickly, predict the score, Dolphins-Saints on Sunday. Let me know what you think ultimately happens. I want to talk about this very briefly because I've mentioned it in depth over the past week and a half. But even with Darren Waller returning, you simply cannot stop doing the Daniel Brunskill 6 offensive line personnel packages, because with Waller being out and there being a lack of a tight end threat in the receiving game, they elected to lean more on the run game by bringing in 6 offensive lineman sets. And Daniel Brunskill would be that person who lined up as the fullback, lined up as an inline tight end, and they moved him in motion, used him on sweeps, on pulls, on even power runs up the middle, getting a head start and almost being the lead blocker for Devon Achane or Ollie Gordon. It has provided massive dividends for this Dolphins football team. In weeks 1 through 6, well, guess what they did? They were the bottom 5, bottom 10 offense in football. Over the last 5 weeks, since week 7 when Darren Waller went down, from week 7 to 11 when they installed this package with Daniel Brunskill, they are top half in the NFL in EPA per play, EPA per rush, EPA per pass, as well as rush success percentage. You have to continue to use Daniel Brunskill, and just because Darren Waller is back, you use Daniel Brunskill in the run game in between the 20s, inside the 10, and I almost would use Darren Waller as a big slot or X receiver at times rather than as an inline tight end. I would like to reserve that for Julian Hill, for Daniel Brunskill, because those two have done an excellent job in the blocking game, which has allowed Miami to be one of the best play-action teams over the last month. Tua's top 5 in almost every statistic in play-action scenarios over the last month. Let's continue to let that ride. More injury news to get to on Austin Jackson and the New Orleans Saints here in a second, but this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions what we're going to eat and what gifts we're going to buy, there is one place where it feels good to be right. That is Prize Picks. I've had a lot of fun playing Prize Picks this season. I've had a ton of success going more than on Devon Achane receptions and fantasy score. He has been phenomenal for the Dolphins all season long. And there is a new feature, by the way, on Prize Picks, early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And by the way, is your fantasy football season already over? My team is not cooked. I'm solid. But if yours is, on Prize Picks, you don't have to wait until next year to hit on some projections with no drafts being required. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. As we continue to talk here leading up to Week 13, Austin Jackson is listed as questionable as well. And as it feels like there's a lot of positivity around Darren Waller returning as well as Rasul Douglas, I still think Austin Jackson might suit up for this game. But the question is, what is his role going to be? I don't know if the Dolphins ultimately throw him back out there as the starting right tackle and just move Larry Borom to the bench. Now, the offensive coordinator, Frank Smith, as well as some of the offensive line coaches mentioned there hasn't been really any conversations about moving Larry Borom inside to right guard, Austin Jackson to right tackle, and benching Cole Strange, which is something I put my hand up and said Miami should think about. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Maybe they pull a little 180 and ultimately do that, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And I actually think we might see Larry Borom start at right tackle for the Dolphins. Now, I don't know anything. I think Austin Jackson should start. If they have him active, he should start at right tackle because he's being paid a lot of money, and the Dolphins need to evaluate if he's still capable of playing at a average to above average level going into the final year of his contract this upcoming season and off season. But with Larry Borom playing so well, I get why it can be a conversation about what Miami should ultimately do. I still think they should go out there and start Austin Jackson because you simply do need to evaluate him the rest of this year. And before we round out the show with Saints injury news, make sure you subscribe. We'll be live on the channel tomorrow for Dolphins Saints Week 13, live at noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. So subscribe and join us for some Dolphins Saints Week 13 football. All right, we're going to round out the show with this. Injury news for the Saints. We mentioned it on Friday's show. Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave were questionable for this game. Number 1 running back for the Saints, number 1 wide receiver. Well, there has been some changes in his injury designations. Chris Olave, he is questionable. We'll ultimately see if he plays. DNP in practice on Wednesday and Thursday usually means doesn't play. We'll see if Olave suits up. Alvin Kamara has already been listed as out, so the longtime veteran running back will not be active for the New Orleans Saints. It looks like rookie out of Kansas, Devin Neal, will get the start. They also have Kendre Miller there as the 1-2 punch. Devin Neal is a very athletic running back. I watched him a lot last year at Kansas working with Jalen Daniels, their quarterback, who is really dynamic with the ball in his hands, respectively. So I don't think Dolphins fans, if you're thinking, oh, Alvin Kamara's out, we should take him lightly, that's not the case. We've already seen Rico Dowdle sub in as the backup running back and run for 200 freaking yards against us in Week 5. Now, That's a different Dolphins team. The run defense has improved drastically. But the point remains, you can't take your opponent lightly just because the starting running back is out for this game. Devin Neal is capable. I know this Saints offense isn't very good. Tyler Shuck getting his, third, fourth start. Got his first win a couple weeks ago, but then they lose to the New Orleans Saints. This game is at home. You're 6-point favorites. I think Miami should win this game pretty handily, pretty comfortably, and move to 5-7 on the year. Now, is that the best thing for the future of the franchise? That's up for debate. But with games against the Saints and Jets over the next 2 weeks, coming out of a bye week, team humming, 3 of their last 4, back-to-back wins against the Commanders and Bills, I think Miami's riding high on confidence, and I think they get another win. I think they win the next 2 games and improve to 6-7 and enter the final 4 games of the season with a chance to really make some noise against the Steelers, Bengals, Patriots, and Buccaneers. We'll ultimately see how it plays out, which is why you subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as well, and I'll see you tomorrow for Dolphins Saints Week 13 football. Go Fins!